Today on Locked On Red Wings, we got two very different goaltending performances, but Detroit drops both preseason games over the weekend.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can hear us wherever you get your podcasts. That includes YouTube. Scotty, we got two Red Wings games to break down from this past weekend. They lose the first one to the Pittsburgh Penguins 3-2 in Pittsburgh, and then they lose the very next night on Saturday 5-2 in Buffalo. We'll break down both those games before previewing another preseason game as they play Monday, Tuesday, Thursday this week. Again, playing the Pittsburgh Penguins, this time at LCA. So we'll do all three of those things this episode. So it's going to be a lot jam-packed in there. Just as a disclosure for full transparency, I was gone at a wedding this weekend, so my viewings of these games was severely limited, mostly just the highlights. Scotty, however, was able to watch those games. So leaning on you, Scotty, to carry the load of this episode like you normally do.
Just another day, really.
Just another day. Before we get to any of that, got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Scotty, when it comes to that first loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins, was it 3-2 in Pittsburgh? You know, what stood out to you as the difference maker in that one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's pretty easy to just point to like John Leonard. I mean, that was
right.
a pretty solid performance from him. Obviously, that's a guy that I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to remember the conversation we had in regards to him and like where he stands, like organizational role, I guess is what
there really wasn't one, to be honest.
No, but we had a footnote at some point about him over the last few weeks, and I'm trying to remember like exactly. But again, like presumably it was, organizational depth type of thing. Right. And yeah, I mean, he obviously had a great game and whatnot. So I think that it's really easy to point to him. But I also think that for what it is worth, the box score might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but I really liked how Gibson looked in that game. I think that it's a guy that obviously there's a lot of expectations on his shoulders and kind of a lot of weight that he is carrying. The final goal that he allowed was, I don't think there's really too much he could have done about that. I mean, say it again.
It was sick.
It was sick. Sorry. Yeah, it was very sick. So yeah, like I think that in terms of, preseason performances and trying to get out of a preseason game what we are hoping to, I really think, offensively, it was largely carried by an organizational depth piece. That's obviously not anything to like write home about. But I think that there is something to be said for, okay, the goalie that we are hopefully going to be leaning on throughout the entire season had a really good showing. I thought he looked pretty darn good and made a lot of high danger saves in this game. So, even if the box score, like I said, maybe isn't the prettiest thing in the world, and that, like you said, that goal at the end there was pretty hard to stop no matter who you are. I think I think that Gibson had a pretty good introduction to the preseason, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, based on my limited viewings of these games, I would tend to agree with you. It's hard to argue against a guy who scored 2 goals for your team not being one of the difference makers. Obviously, difference makers for both these guys in a game that they lost. But it's a preseason game. Not going to, again, you don't want to get too high on the highs or get too low on the lows. I thought John Leonard obviously had great finishing on both those goals. Incredible shot after Doucette forced a neutral zone turnover. He came in all alone. And then the second one was a pass. It was a power play goal, I believe. Valinder fed him the pass in the high slot. And again, just another incredible shot. He was able to rip home. Pretty simple. You score 2 goals, you're going to be a difference maker. He is likely going to just be AHL depth for the Detroit Red Wings organizationally. He'll probably be one of the better players on the Grand Rapids Griffins when it comes to AHL veterans. He historically produces really well at the AHL level. He had 32 points in 63 games last year, 44 points in 67 games the season prior. I'm sorry, I got that. I went 1 year too far in the past. 61 and 72 last season, 32 and 63 the year before. So he's an AHL producer. He'll break glass in case of emergency call-up if a lot of injuries pile up, but he is ultimately going to be spending his season with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and that was likely what he was signed to do to bolster their lineup with AHL vets. I also agree with the John Gibson take. This was I think this is the first time we saw him in the preseason, John Gibson, and he made 13 of 14 saves. He looked really sharp from what I was able to see. The one goal, like you said, Dewar, you can't blame him on that one. Honestly, the only person on that one that I'm going to give flack to, and not a lot of flack either, Gustafsson didn't really body him up nearly enough, kind of let him just rip that spinorama backhand shot. But that backhand shot was incredible. Like you said, no goalie can predict that's the shot that player is going to take and also predict that's where that puck's going to go. So I don't give Gibson any flack for that one. Scotty, what else stood out to you in this hockey game?
Adam? Emmett Finney. I'm going to talk about it in therapy. I need help. Like I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. There's no Adam Finney in my life. Anyway, yes.
Maybe
Emmett
there
Finney.
needs to be.
Okay. Yes, clearly. No, Emmett Finney again, man. I think the case gets stronger and stronger, like every time what?
I think there's a rumbling happening upstairs. I think Allison's running the KitchenAid. I think she's making sourdough, buddy.
Maybe she's like in a fight.
Yeah, either that or something's going on upstairs. I need to get up there for. We'll find out at the end of the episode.
He's probably fine.
Either there's sourdough or violence. I'll find out at the end of this episode.
Hey, man, you're going to go upstairs to something, I guess, exciting. Either way, really.
Right.
No, I thought Finney played well again, though. One where I don't think he ended with any points in the box score in this game, but it's in this game especially, he really seemed to have no fear going into corners and kind of doing those things that we consistently have talked about. Okay, even if he's not, again, like I'm not saying that this dude has to go from 7th round a year ago to like top line left wing. Okay, I'm not saying that it has to be that dramatic, but even just on the team, like having a guy that is doing that everything he's doing. We mentioned a lot like of going into the corners and whatnot. I thought in this game it was very noticeable in the neutral zone, especially when he was on the ice. They continue to be a team that I think they let off the pedal a little bit in this one specifically, as opposed to maybe the first 2 games of the preseason, but a team that is, again, trying to be more aggressive on the forecheck and be more high-paced. And I think that he is a player that is doing that to kind of an extreme, to be honest with you, so far this preseason.
Yeah, I mean, he and Danielson, this was their, I think, 3rd game straight being played. Obviously, the coaching staff, I shouldn't say obviously because it's not obvious, but what I would infer from this is that the coaching staff likes what they're seeing from Danielson and Finney, and so they're trying to give them as much runway as possible to prove themselves. Because Emmett Finney's playing in games when he's with Larkin and Raymond, and he's playing in games when they're not playing. They want to get as much tape on them as possible to deduce if these guys are NHL ready, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for them to be playing in all these hockey games, in my opinion. A couple other things that stood out to me in this hockey game before we move on to the second game in segment 2. There was the Carson Bantle fight. He fought Dewar earlier. He hit Bantle little bit from, it's a little bit of a nasty looking hit, not intentional, I don't believe, but it caught him a little high. Dewar took exception to it, and they just immediately dropped the gloves and had it out. You got to love fights in preseason hockey. Just a different type of hockey player, these guys.
For sure.
Doing that kind of thing in the preseason. There was also, in the 2 goals against that ultimately decided this game, not counting the Dewar one, there was the collision and then the lack of effort from John Leonard, and that led to Robbie Fabry.
For sure.
I think it was the game-tying goal at that point for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Maybe that put them ahead. No, it was the game-tying goal for the Pittsburgh Penguins. basically 3 Red Wings collided along the boards or near the boards in the defensive zone. Robbie Fabry was late guy in. John Leonard coasted into the defensive zone. And then once he saw Robbie Fabry get the puck, crap, realized last second. Nice, good recovery on my part.
That's a professional right there, ladies and gents. That's an absolute pro at work.
A true pro would never even get that close to saying it. But he didn't. He, instead of removing his feet, he just reached, and then Robbie Fabry scored on the chaos. Good for Robbie Fabry, though. Like watching our former Wings succeed. And then finally, the Tomasino power play goal for the Penguins. Another tic-tac-toe pass from down low to out front that resulted in an immediate goal. That's the second time this preseason, Scotty, I have seen the Red Wings give up a power play goal because of that low to high pass. So clearly they got to get better at covering that passing lane, take away that opportunity. But again, preseason, I'm not going to get too low because this was a game where there was a bunch of guys who probably aren't going to be on the team for the most part. So
yeah, well, especially this game, right? Like,
right.
I mean, we'll talk about it. Patrick Kane finally played in game 2 of the weekend, right? Like you had a little bit more of the familiar faces there. But yeah, in this game specifically, I mean, again, like all the respect in the world, but like Leonard was your biggest force offensively. Like this was just not a game where you had the regular NHLers out there. So I'm not going to take too much in the loss.
Yeah, and a couple other notes. I don't think Travis Hamonic had a particularly good game. Again, I didn't see all of the game. I've seen lowlights.
I think that's fair.
And that doesn't strike confidence into a fan base that was already lukewarm at best on his signing to begin with. Yeah. And my only other note here was Elmer Soderblom forecheck that led to a chance and multiple Finney chances, and we've already talked about Emmett Finney. Not Adam Finney, Emmett Finney, Scotty.
We can talk Adam if you want.
We can talk Adam if you want. Let's head to segment 2, and when we return, we'll talk about the second loss of the weekend against the Buffalo Sabres. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one place. Together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, when it comes to the loss to the Buffalo Sabres on Saturday, who do you have as a difference maker?
That is a great question because I think that there is an argument to be made for a maybe positive difference maker and then also maybe more of a negative difference maker.
Why don't you just share both of those? If those are what you're debating between, go for it.
Well, that's so supportive of you.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay, I feel like whenever anyone always asks you, okay, I got good news, bad news, you always go with the bad news first. So we'll go with the negative here. I am unfortunately going to go Sebastian Cossa for the difference maker in a negative fashion in this one. Allowed 4 goals. 3 of them were at even strength. His save percentage was .800. Maybe not the worst performance ever. And I want to keep reiterating, my opinion of Cossa is not like substantially changing based on these preseason games. Like, I don't think, oh my goodness, he gave up, 4 goals to a team that was playing a lot of their NHLers, including, some like really high-end dynamic is the word I'm looking for players. Obviously Tage Thompson had 2 goals in this game. I think that. Are you okay?
Did Cossa take a penalty too? It says,
Yes.
Delay of game? Well, did he shoot it out of the?
Yeah. I forgot that happened, but yeah, you're right. That did happen.
Regardless, doesn't matter. He got a penalty. Adds to the performance that we saw from him in this hockey game. I saw all 4 of the goals that he allowed. All 5 of the goals. No, 4 of the goals he allowed in this hockey game. I was not impressed with 2 of them. You know, and Max wrote a little bit about it in his most recent article too. The stocks, rising stocks and falling stocks from the Red Wings preseason thus far. And everyone gets beat by
great read, by the way.
It was always a fantastic, great read. The 2 goals that stand out to me that I'm just like, you got to make those saves is the Radim Murka one. Granted, Radim Murka was all alone on Sebastian Cossa, but Cossa was squared up to Murka. And that puck just got through him. He needs to make the save on that one. He read the play. He got across. He was even up. Murka didn't make a move. He just fired a wrister that literally got through Cossa underneath his arm. And then there was the goal, the Tage Thompson power play goal.
Dude, he had one where he just completely overcommitted and was just
that was
out of position.
That was the power play goal.
Yeah,
where he got out of position and then he was just swimming for help. Yeah. And it was an easy goal for Tage Thompson on the power play. I had written down Alex Tuch, but he got the primary assist on it. I was just one player behind. Those are plays that, and again, you don't want to get too low coming out of preseason games, right? And you don't want to get too high off of good performances. But his first appearance in the preseason, he didn't put up great numbers. This game, he was legitimately a reason why they lost the game.
For sure.
And when you couple that with the comments Yzerman made and the performances he had at the end of the season, it is a little disheartening. And as a Red Wings fan, you were hoping to see evidence that, like, okay, he's going to bounce back. And he probably will. He'll probably go to Grand Rapids and he'll have a solid season. But this far into his development, I think it's fair to say Red Wings fans were hoping for a little bit more in preseason. You're hoping for him to not dominate, but just have a good, solid game in a preseason game. And he did not have that. And it's okay for Red Wings fans to go, well, that's a little concerning. Now, it's not okay for Red Wings fans to, freak out and say it's so over, because at the end of the day, it is a preseason game and everyone's allowed to have bad games. But I mean, yeah, it does, make you pump an eyebrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I actually think, we were just talking about the piece that Boltman wrote. I actually think he worded it absolutely perfectly in that, this is a guy, because of how this season ended last year, you were hoping that he could maybe snuff that flame of, maybe concern or whatnot. And while I don't think it's fair to completely, with preseason performances against NHL talent, be like, you know what, this guy stinks. It's, his career's over. He also is not actively doing anything to eliminate that concern, right? Like he is. It's at best a push, right? At best, nothing has changed in our assessment or how we feel about Cossa within the organization right now. So yeah, I think that's fair.
Other things that stood out to me as positive, just based on the snippets I was able to watch from this hockey game: second line, Marco Kasper, Alex DeBrincat, Patrick Kane. I mean, that's your line. That's your second line. This is the second time we've seen them this training camp. I think this is the first game we've actually seen all 3 of them out there together, if I recall correctly. There's so many preseason games, and there's the red and white game and everything. And I know they were scoring a lot in training camp, but they produced in this hockey game. Kasper forecheck led to a chance for DeBrincat that he couldn't finish into an empty net. Then a DeBrincat forecheck led to a Patrick Kane goal, 2-1, and then DeBrincat passed to Sherratt, who almost scored, but Kasper was able to clean up the rebound. So that second line produced 3 quality chances, 2 of which converted to goals. I mean, the forechecking from Kasper and DeBrincat is going to feed families in the regular season offensively for the Detroit Red Wings. So it's nice to see that established. And I also thought, Scotty, we've basically, between what I've seen from the third line in the snippets from that game and in the snippets of the last game that they played, and what I've read about the third line from articles, that Rasmussen, Kopp, Appleton line is going to be a staple of just forechecking mentality. It's nice to see early signs of life from the depth scoring.
Yeah, and I think that is obviously a big thing that we have circled going into the year, right? And that's
Right.
why there is so much to there is stuff to watch in the NHL group games because you're looking for obviously the players that you expect to be on the team for a majority of the season. And then in the like younger players and prospects game, you're like, okay, which one of these guys can maybe break onto the NHL team and be a difference maker and be kind of a depth scoring option. So yeah, I agree. I think it's there is something to be said at least for that, which is nice.
Right. Scotty, let's head to another break. When we return, we'll kind of do an abbreviated stuff segment. Anything else left on your docket that maybe we didn't touch on between these two hockey games, and then we'll preview the upcoming preseason game that's happening tonight. So stay tuned for that. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings, coming up. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it gives you so many ways to play. You've built parlays, you've tried player props, and even followed the live lines during the games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much more. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, Scotty. Final segment here of this episode. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that maybe I missed that I couldn't have possibly seen by just watching highlights that stuck out to you?
The only other player that I really want to highlight at a minimum is Aljo. I think that he continues to raise his stock maybe in the preseason. Not that there's a ton to raise in that regard. I mean, I think like his role is what it is. I don't think that he's going to excel so much that we're like, oh, first pair Aljo. But, if he can be that solidified, you're confident in him, second pair guy, then that's obviously a huge win for the organization. I think that he's had a really, really solid preseason in general. I have to keep checking myself to not say spring training every single time I say preseason. But that's another thing that Boltman talked about a lot over the weekend and wrote about in his article from The Athletic is that he's put on some weight and that has seemingly, at least so far in some limited preseason games, helped him a little bit, use the body and be aggressive in, honestly, on and off the puck. And I think we're kind of seeing that throughout the weekend, even though, again, not a great defensive performance, not a great goaltending performance. In this Buffalo game specifically, I think just in the preseason as a whole, Aljo's really impressed.
Yeah, I mean, he did finish the game with the fourth highest Corsi for percentage at 5-on-5 rather, coming in at 59.26%. That's in a game that they lost, so nearly 60% in a game that they lost is pretty impressive. And he needed to add weight. One of the things we've talked about with Albert Johansson is towards the end of the year especially, he began to get really pushed in the defensive zone, kind of just not strong enough, plain and simple. And so hearing that he's put on weight, I think he's closing in on 200 pounds now, is something for somebody his size is going to help him a lot. Not that he's small, but being nearly 200 pounds at about 6'1", I believe, is going to be tremendous for him. And he's not the only player who's put on weight either. You've heard about Marco Kasper, you've heard about Carter Mazur, both guys who've put on weight this last offseason. Good weight. Not bad weight. That'll help them as they look to take strides and steps forward in their game. When it comes to the game coming up here on their slate, they play Pittsburgh again tonight. This one will be at LCA. Their second to last home game at LCA for the preseason. I would expect you probably see a couple more NHL lines in this hockey game. Obviously, you have the Larkin line, who didn't play either of these two games, as well as Sider and guys like that. So I think because it'll be on home ice, you'll probably see a few more NHL veterans for the fans. But when it comes to, what to expect from this game, it's still preseason, so the jury's really out on what to expect any given game.
Right. I mean, we'll see. I don't really have too much of a preview for a preseason game. It comes down to, again, like I kind of just talked about, depending on which personnel grouping goes over there, you're either looking for the NHL players to look game ready or regular season game ready, and if it's the young kids again, then we're going to look for Emmett Finney to keep impressing, I guess.
I'm really curious as to when they're going to begin to make real roster cuts. And I know some players have been cut without being cut because some players, like Rudy Guimond, for example.
Usually we have a couple of announcements by now. It's interesting.
Right. Well, and so Rudy Guimond, they only did one round of roster cuts that was announced, but Rudy Guimond's already back playing with his Moncton Wildcats or whatever they are. So he's already back to playing with his hockey team. So he's been cut without an official announcement. So I'm just curious when it'll happen, but with 4 games left to play in the preseason, it probably won't happen until, I would imagine, after game 6, because I know those last 2 games were talked about as being like a practice run, simulation of the regular season. So we'll see. Scotty, do you have any final thoughts?
Patrick Kane goal and Alex DeBrincat forecheck. Both fantastic in that Buffalo Sabres game, which I think is just beautiful to hear out loud. That is just a wonderful sentence that I will repeat over and over again.
Well, and the Kasper forechecks that lead to those chances too. I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing Marco Kasper as the full-time center of line number 2, and that seems to be where it's going. There's a conversation still to be had about left wing 1 though, because it's looking like 2 of our options for left wing 1 are solidified elsewhere in the lineup, and you're starting to pin your hopes on a 7th round pick to crack the roster, which isn't necessarily. I mean, it's great to see his stock surging as the way they are, but it's definitely not the way you wanted it to happen.
Just agreed. Now switching topics again. Finally got to the bottom of the Cossa situation. Sebastian Cossa played a puck outside the trapezoid. That's all it was.
Oh.
And Aljo had a trip in the same period of the same game, which is what I was thinking of. Where I was like, wow, I really remember a tripping penalty. That was not Kossa's. Kossa's was, just playing it out of the trapezoid delay game. So
Shame. All right.
Scotty.
We ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, recapping this one. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.